Thanks very much, and good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here, and first of all, I'd just like to say a big congratulations to the scholars that are the new crop. It was a pretty impressive lineup last night, and I feel a little bit inadequate after seeing them. So, well done. Before I commence, I would like to make mention firstly of Nuffield Australia for affording me this extraordinary research opportunity. It's changed my life in terms of personal development and allowed me to embrace the bigger picture that I knew was out there, but had not had the opportunity to pursue earlier. There are many of you also probably wondering why this old bloke, a scholar from 2015, only delivering his presentation in 2022. Long story short, some health issues with my youngest son, Ben, over a number of years. I sincerely thank Nuffield Australia, and especially Jodie and Nicola, for their understanding in my circumstances. So thank you very much. My topic is the use of prescribed fire as a native management tool. A massive thank you to my sponsor, the Australian Wool Innovation Limited, and I think George is representing them here today, so thank you, George. Not only for the incredibly generous scholarship sponsorship, but also for all you do in our industry in terms of research and development and advocacy. An incredibly valuable resource for the merino wool industry, so thank you. Most importantly, I would like to pass on my sincerest of love and gratitude to my family for encouraging me to embrace the Nuffield Scholarship. The carrying of the load back home whilst I travelled was at times difficult to reconcile. There are the odd feelings of personal guilt that were always met with 100% support and encouragement. So thank you to Suze and my 3 beautiful children. A quick bit about my family and its business. We're graziers from the Central Tablelands, with operations at Tarana and Rolleston, New South Wales. We have an 800mm annual rainfall, which is evenly spread. The partnership is family-run partnership and is managed by my younger brother, Bruce. We run a tad over 5,000 sheep and produce approximately 30 tonnes of 16 micron wool per year. We run a couple of hundred cows of Shorthorn and Angus breeding. Pastures are a mix of native and introduced perennials on granite soils, highly acid granite soils. Landscape is softly undulating to undulating. My kids, along with my 2 brothers' kids, are the 6th generation to be working at various levels of input within this farm structure. Given the generational fatigue around a fixed asset, despite significant growth, it is always pertinent that off-farm diversification was explored and embraced. To that end, off-farm contracting is also a core part of the family operation. I operate in an advisory role to the grazing partnership and run the off-farm land management business. Generational fatigue, it's almost a Nuffield topic in itself. The branded bale that you see there shows the W and triangle, which was the first stenciled onto a bale in the 1890s. Of particular interest to me is the use of management of fire in the landscape, and it's topical globally at the moment. Our farm is on the western edge of the Great Dividing Range. We currently classify ourselves as farming at the urban interface. Landscape change has been significant over the last decade in terms of development. Subdivision of agricultural land to cater for a growing Sydney population is increasingly evident in our area. We also have large tracts of public lands in the forms of national parks. A possibly unforeseen issue as a result of this peri-urban development is the intricacy of managing landscapes with prescribed fire. There is significant evidence of natural wildfire activity pre-European settlement. The obvious source of fire was lightning. When lightning ignited the landscape and fire took hold, it would burn unimpeded until such time as it was extinguished by rain or natural fire breaks such as a river. The frequency of these occurrences were annual, with specific dry sclerophyll forest and open grassy woodland landscapes having a burn interval or cycle of around 10 years. This was a purely natural fire prescription that forged the unique fire-adapted landscape that we have become accustomed to here in Australia. Since European settlement, fire, especially at the urban interface, has been perceived as a threat in terms of likely damage to property and the adverse effect of smoke on people's lives. Over time, particularly in our large swathes of publicly managed land and smaller lifestyle private farms, at our urban interface, natural or even introduced fires have been excluded almost totally. Lightning strikes were now being suppressed, whereas prior to that they would have crept unabated through the landscape. As a result, with no fire to eliminate encroaching woody species or to encourage young native grasses in our open woody grasslands, these landscapes were being overrun to non-desirable woody shrubs and weeds. We're now seeing ecosystems change, where overgrown bushland and fringe peri-urban grasslands are more susceptible to wildfire, and sadly a reduction in the natural fire interval. Throughout the course of my travels, I found that fire exclusion was impacting highly valuable ecosystems and native landscapes across the world. Mismanaged range and grasslands in Texas due to the fire exclusion and the subsequent woody juniper invasion has seen millions of hectares of grazing land removed from production. Then, with the highly flammable juniper now the dominant species, wildfire is inevitable. It burns hot and decimates entire ecosystems. Of particular interest to me was the political interest in prescribed burning in the US whilst I was travelling. Loss of entire landscapes, lives and livelihoods due to wildfire at an increasing rate has seen significant public pressure applied to lawmakers to have landscapes better managed. This is particularly so at the urban interface, where the population is most vulnerable to wildfire. Impediments to prescribed burning in the past have been lack of skilled resource to implement prescribed burn and the effect of smoke on the community stemming from prescribed burns. The smoke issue is a double-edged sword, as the effects of wildfire smoke stemming from mismanaged or fire-excluded forests pose a lot more of a threat. Perception is the problem here. Also of interest was discussion amongst prescribed burn researchers that our wildfire issues are predominantly due to mismanagement of forests. They had that down as 40% cause, poor urban interface development, which is 40% cause, and a warming climate, a 20% cause. This is a stark contrast to the message being portrayed in mainstream media that climate change is the fundamental issue. It needs to be clearly stated that prescribed fire for the purpose of managing native landscapes is only one of a number of tools at the land manager's disposal. Mechanical maintenance through slashing, mowing or other, grazing at appropriate times and of course use of chemicals, In most instances on my travels, a combination of each of these tools was used. There is significant research coming out of the US highlighting the value of a graze burn technique. During my travels, I found it difficult to relate my study topic simply to the prescribed burning of native pastures. Instead, researchers, farmers, graziers were referring to a landscape in a holistic sense. Fire was being used across the entire landscape in rangelands and grasslands, not just in native pastures, for beneficial outcomes. Benefits of prescribed fire included slight raises in pH in acidic landscapes, which is of benefit to the acidic soils along the central tablelands where we run our Merinos. If undertaken strategically, following strict weather parameters, a potassium benefit was evident post a prescribed burn. A negligible effect on soil carbon. A net sequestration of carbon when factoring fresh pasture growth. This is possibly the most difficult measurable to comprehend. So my conclusions, prescribed burning in native landscapes requires a significant level of planning. A prescribed fire achieves desired outcomes when seasonal and weather conditions are ideal. Quite often in a public land management sense, prescribed burns are undertaken when the resource, that's the personnel, are available. This is especially evident in a situation where those personnel might be volunteers. Incorrect timing for a prescribed burn can lead to very poor outcomes. Graziers are generally in a position to apply fire at precisely the right time. A nil tenure approach generally works better. This becomes problematic when there are many stakeholders, for example, at the urban interface. Nonetheless, collaboration and coordination with neighbours and public landholders is key. Working with neighbouring farmers and undertaking group burn, for example, is advantageous in that it achieves scale. The involvement of government services such as LLS, who are becoming heavily involved with prescribed fire as recently, or your local fire agency will assist greatly in terms of a greater level of expertise and acquired knowledge. Insurance is also a factor that will need to be considered, and the use of agency involvement may assist in addressing this issue. As previously discussed, prescribed fire is a single tool best used in conjunction with other land management tools. In our grazing business on the Central Tablelands of New South Wales, we have conducted prescribed burning for generations. It was done for the purposes of promoting green shoots amongst annuals and perennials, and for managing the understory in the large tracts of remnant veg across our properties. The results were impressive, but only observed and measured at a subjective level. It is our focus to start measuring soil change data, species composition and overall productivity gains in an objective manner. The research and data where prescribed burns has been undertaken on a landscape level in the US is very encouraging, albeit very new, and I will be leveraging off that research. The next big space to watch is the carbon space, especially in terms of mismanaged public landscapes. There is discussion currently happening that if the UNCC decides that a nation's public land, its forests, are mismanaged, then the emissions from that resulting mega fire may be accountable in terms of national carbon targets. For example, the CO2 emissions from another Black Summer event, which is inevitable, in a landscape that has been declared mismanaged, could blow the nation's annual carbon targets overnight. This, in my view, would see a massive shift back towards the application of prescribed fire at a much larger scale than is current. My travels took me to 8 states in the US and consisted of visits to research stations at the universities of Texas, Kansas and North Carolina. Of particular interest was the Tall Timbers Research Station in Tallahassee, Florida. Their research on restoring fire intervals to reflect on healthier, more biodiverse landscapes was incredible. Also visited France and Southeast Asia, specifically Indonesia, to look at the tropical burning. Once again, I'd like to make a massive thank you to Nuffield Australia, and a special mention to Wayne and Jody and my Nuffield GFP group, 2 of whom are here today, I think, or one is Sarah and Sonia. And Jody, thanks very much for confirming that we were, in fact, the best Japan GFP group ever. So thank you.